I didn't feel rage. I felt a sudden, chilling clarity. It was the kind of cold, perfect focus that comes when every distraction in the world melts away, leaving only the target. Before I could even process the insult hanging in the air, my boldest colleague, Mark, spoke up. His voice dripped with a false, sugary enthusiasm that was a work of art. "What a fun idea, Kevin. Let's make it a competition, you versus the whole team." A wave of support erupted around the conference table. It wasn't just agreement. It was a physical force of clapping and shouts of "Hell yay!" I joined in, the sound of my own hands striking together feeling powerful and decisive. We were a single entity, a beast waking from a long slumber. Just then, our director, Mr. Harrison, walked in, drawn by the sudden explosion of noise. Mark, without missing a beat, announced the motivational competition. To our astonishment, a wide grin spread across Harrison's face. He loved it. In that moment, an unspoken pact was forged among us. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about total annihilation. My name is Anna, and for 10 years, my life was defined by the rhythm of a successful sales floor. We were a team, a genuine one. We knew each other's families, celebrated birthdays, and covered for each other without a second thought. Our office was a well-oiled machine, consistently exceeding our targets and enjoying the easy camaraderie that comes with shared success. There was a low, constant hum of energy, of calls being made, deals being closed, and quiet laughter in the kitchen. We were good at our jobs, and we were proud of it. Then Kevin arrived. He was our new manager, hired from outside the company to shake things up. From the very first day, he carried himself like a king inspecting a pigsty. He never asked about our methods or our clients. He only talked about himself. His past glories were his favorite subject. We heard endlessly about the legendary deals he closed at his old firm, the records he shattered, the rivals he crushed. We were just background characters in the grand movie of his life, and I could feel the positive energy of our office slowly being suffocated by his colossal ego. It all came to a head in his first official sales meeting. He had us all gather in the main conference room, the air already feeling stale with his presence. He stood at the head of the table, pacing back and forth like a general before a battle he was certain he'd already won. For 20 minutes, he delivered a monologue about his own genius. He talked about his killer instinct and his unbeatable strategies. He didn't use our names. He just pointed vaguely in our directions, referring to us as you people or the team. Finally, he projected our monthly sales figures onto the large screen. The numbers were good, very good. We were already over our target with a week left in the month. I felt a familiar swell of pride, looking at the solid, undeniable proof of our hard work. I glanced at Mark, who gave me a subtle, satisfied nod. We were expecting a well done. Instead, Kevin stared at the screen with a look of profound disappointment. He let out a heavy, theatrical sigh. "This," he said, gesturing to our success, "is what I call coasting. You're not aiming high enough. You're not hungry." The absurdity of it was stunning. A confused, angry murmur rippled through the room. We exchanged bewildered glances across the table. We had just broken the department record for the 3rd month in a row. How could he possibly spin that as a failure? Then, puffed up with an arrogance so pure it was almost fascinating, he delivered the line that sealed his fate. He leaned forward, placing his palms flat on the table, and looked at each of us in turn. "I could hit that target on my own," he said, his voice low and condescending. "So if you lot can't smash it as a team, something's seriously wrong." The disrespect was so profound, it hung in the air like thick smoke. The quiet hum of the projector was the only sound in the room. He had not only insulted our work, he had insulted our very identity as a team. He saw us as a collective failure, a problem to be fixed, rather than the engine of the department. In that silence, I looked around at my colleagues. I saw the tightening in Maria's jaw, the way Mark's knuckles had gone white where he gripped his pen. We had built something here, something effective and collaborative. And this man, this stranger, had tried to tear it down in a single, arrogant breath. He mistook our silence for submission. He thought he had put us in our place, but he wasn't looking closely enough. He didn't see the sparks igniting in 12 different pairs of eyes. He didn't understand that he hadn't just issued a challenge. He had declared a war. And in that moment, I knew I would do whatever it took to make him regret it. And in that moment, I knew I would do whatever it took to make him regret it. But our revenge required no complex scheming, only our professional expertise. We weren't going to play his game of ego and intimidation. We were going to weaponize our competence. The plan was simple: unleash hell. That evening, after Kevin left in a huff, locking his office door with a loud, final click, the rest of us gathered by the large windows overlooking the city. The mood wasn't angry anymore. It was quiet, focused, and humming with a dangerous new energy. Mark leaned against the glass, his arms crossed. "All right," he said, his voice low. "He wants a competition, he's got one, but we do this our way. We work together. Every lead, every call, every piece of information gets shared." Maria, who handled some of our most difficult accounts with unshakable grace, nodded firmly. "If a lead comes in that's better for someone else's specialty, you pass it. No hesitation. Our team total is the only number that matters." We all agreed. This wasn't about individual commissions this month. This was about a demonstration of force. We would collaborate like never before, passing opportunities to whoever was best suited, cheering every single success, and turning our side of the office into a powerhouse of positive energy and relentless performance. We would build a mountain of sales so high that Kevin, with his zero-track record and all-talk approach, would be completely buried beneath it. I looked at his dark office door. His greatest vulnerability was his colossal ego. We were going to starve it of oxygen. The first week was a masterclass in contrasts. Our side of the office floor was electric. The phones rang constantly. Keyboards clicked with a steady, purposeful rhythm. There were quiet fist bumps over cubicle walls and encouraging smiles exchanged across the room. We were a symphony of productivity. Meanwhile, Kevin sat in his glass-walled office, a silent king on a lonely throne. His phone remained stubbornly quiet. He'd pick it up occasionally, check for a dial tone as if it were broken, then place it back down with a frustrated sigh. He spent hours staring at his computer screen, but his reflection was the only thing moving. We installed a large digital sales tracker on the main wall, a tool we always used for motivation. But this time, it felt different. It felt like a weapon. Our team's number began to climb. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Kevin's number remained a perfect, beautiful 0. Every sale was a small victory, a single stone laid on the monument to his failure. When I closed a deal, Mark would call out, "Nice one, Anna," and a ripple of applause would follow. When Maria landed a huge client, we all took a 2-minute break to congratulate her. We were fueling each other. The real turning point came with Jonathan. He was our newest starter, barely 3 months in and still finding his footing. He was sweet, hardworking, but incredibly nervous, especially on the phone. Kevin had mostly ignored him, occasionally making a condescending comment about his lack of killer instinct. Jonathan had been working a difficult lead for over a week. We all knew about it. He'd stay late, researching and preparing, his brow furrowed with concentration. We offered him tips, ran through practice calls with him, and gave him constant encouragement. On Thursday afternoon, I saw him sit up straight at his desk. He took a deep breath and made the call. The entire team went quiet, pretending to work but really listening to his side of the conversation. His voice was shaky at first, then grew stronger, more confident. After 10 minutes, he hung up the phone, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I got it," he whispered. "I got the deal." For a split second, there was silence. Then, the office erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a spontaneous, roaring cheer that shook the entire floor. Mark let out a whoop and ran over to give Jonathan a high five that nearly knocked him out of his chair. We were all on our feet, clapping, laughing, genuinely thrilled for him. The explosion of sound made Kevin physically jump in his office. He looked out at us, his face a mask of confusion and fury. He saw a united team celebrating a victory he had no part in. He saw a success that was born from the very collaboration he disdained. He saw that we didn't need him. From that day on, I watched his facade crumble piece by piece. The confident, chest puffed out strut he used to patrol the office with was replaced by a sullen, shoulder-slumped shuffle. He stopped telling his pointless stories about past glories. The bragging simply ceased. Soon came the outward signs of his fraying nerves. A phone slammed down so hard it cracked the receiver. A headset thrown against the wall with a plastic crunch. He started muttering to himself, pacing his office like a caged animal. We ignored it all, offering him nothing. No sympathy, no fear, no attention. We just kept working, kept succeeding, kept adding to our score on the wall. The final stage of his meltdown came near the end of the month. Our team number on the tracker was astronomical, the highest it had ever been. Kevin's was still 0. He stormed out of his office and marched over to the sales tracker, staring at it as if it had personally offended him. "This is ridiculous," he announced to the room, his voice thin and cracking. "There's no way. The leads are being diverted. The whole system is rigged against me." No one responded. We just paused, looked at him, and then calmly went back to our calls. Denying him the conflict he so desperately wanted was more powerful than any argument we could have made. He was shouting into a void, and he knew it. We were a tidal wave of success, a force of nature born from mutual respect and shared purpose. And he was just a man standing on the shore screaming at the ocean, and he was just a man standing on the shore screaming at the ocean. His tantrum changed nothing. He stood there for a long moment, his chest heaving, his face a blotchy red. The silence of the office was his only answer. Defeated, he turned and slunk back into his glass cage, closing the door without a sound. He didn't even make it to the end of the month. 2 days later, an email from Mr. Harrison appeared in our inboxes. The subject line was neutral, corporate. "Department update." The message inside was even more sterile. "Please be advised that as of today, Kevin is pursuing other opportunities. We wish him the best in his future endeavors." There was no celebration. There didn't need to be. I saw Mark read the email, then slowly raise his eyes to meet mine from across the room. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. A quiet wave of relief washed over the sales floor, a silent, shared understanding that the storm had finally passed. Later that afternoon, I watched him pack his sad little box of belongings. It wasn't a large box. Inside went a generic company mug, a few lonely-looking pens, and a framed photograph that I assumed was of himself. There was no anger left in him, just a hollow, defeated look. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if every object was heavier than it should be. He couldn't even meet our eyes. As he taped the box shut, his gaze remained fixed on his desk, on his hands, on anything but the faces of the people he had so profoundly underestimated. He had tried to make us feel small, but in the end, he was the one who had been reduced to nothing. When he was done, he picked up the box and walked toward the exit. A profound silence fell over the office, the only sound the soft scuff of his shoes on the carpet. He walked past our desks, a ghost leaving the scene of his own haunting. The main door clicked shut behind him. For a beat, nobody moved. Then I heard it, a quiet, collective exhale that seemed to come from everyone at once. It was the sound of a team that had been holding its breath for a month, a team that had not only survived but had triumphed. The air in the room instantly felt cleaner, lighter. Later that day, a second email from Mr. Harrison arrived. This one was different. "Team," it began, "I've just reviewed the final numbers for the month. I don't know how you did it, but you have smashed every single sales record in this company's history. Congratulations on an unbelievable performance." We had won. Not just the competition, but the war for our own professional dignity. 15 years later, I'm a sales director at a different company. I sit in an office, but my door is always open. That month taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. A leader's job isn't to be the star player, but to create an environment where the entire team can shine. I lead my team with the respect and trust that Kevin so profoundly lacked. We celebrate team milestones, not just individual numbers. When a new starter closes their first big deal, we make sure they feel like a hero, because in that moment they are. We collaborate, we support, and we succeed together. The other day, out of a sudden flicker of curiosity, I looked him up online. I typed his name into the search bar of a professional networking site, wondering where his ambition had taken him. His profile was almost comical, a perfect time capsule of delusion. His profile picture was a stiff, overly serious headshot that looked at least a decade old. The headline he had written for himself read, "World-class sales director and motivational leader." But right below that grand title was the all-too-telling tag, a small green banner that said it all: open to new opportunities. It was clear he had learned nothing. He was still selling the one product he was an expert in, himself. His page was full of vague, self-congratulatory posts about crushing goals and the mindset of a winner. But his work history showed a long string of short-term jobs, none lasting more than a year or two. I closed the browser, not with anger or even satisfaction, but with a quiet sense of clarity. He was still that same man, standing on the shore, screaming about his own greatness. And it was just as clear that, just like all those years ago, nobody was buying. The narrative of Anna and Kevin reached its definitive conclusion in the previous part. The story arc is complete. It detailed the initial conflict, the team's successful retaliation, Kevin's departure, and a final reflection 15 years in the future which provided a conclusive resolution for both the protagonist and the antagonist. The outline for current part provided is empty. My core function is to expand upon the provided plot materials. Without a new outline detailing subsequent events, I cannot continue this specific story without inventing a new, unsupported narrative, which would violate the established conclusion and my core directives. As narrator prime, my mission is to craft a gripping story based on the provided structure. With the structure of this story fulfilled, I must conclude it here to maintain its narrative integrity. I am ready to begin a new narrative. Please provide the creative materials for the next project.